Running Australia is a big job. But if you think it's the government of the day in Canberra that's calling all the shots, after seeing this story, you might think again. Tonight, in a joint investigation with the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age, we expose the highly inappropriate actions of one of our most senior public servants. Michael Puzzullo is the boss of Home Affairs, the department responsible for Australia's national security. He's supposed to be independent and apolitical, but as you'll see, that's not the way he operates. Pezzullo has been wielding extraordinary power from the shadows, interfering in government and doing all he can to build a massive empire. This man is in charge of keeping Australia safe. His name is Michael Puzzullo, and he's the boss, the Secretary of the Department of Home Affairs. As one of our highest-ranking officials, he must be fiercely apolitical and independent, devoted to policy, not power. Someone who leaves grubby political plotting to those who do it best, the politicians.
Elected governments are fully entitled to expect loyalty.
Publicly, Pezzullo has always claimed he plays by the public service rules.
What is important for the public servant is that one must absent oneself from any partisan discussions and avoid exposure to raw politics.
Michael Puzzullo says one thing, but he acts very differently. How do we know this? Well, we've been leaked hundreds of encrypted messages he sent to a Liberal Party power broker. Tonight, we take you inside Pezzullo's secret attempts to influence government.
You need a right-winger in there.
Pezzullo's messages are as revealing
I could have turned it into a great story for the government.
as they are worrying.
If Dutton is out, give me Taylor or Tudge.
They show an entirely inappropriate campaign of political playmaking.
Only issue will then be if Labor sees an opportunity to tack left.
The evidence that we've seen suggests that he has crossed a line.
There isn't one type of trust that hasn't been breached by this kind of conduct.
It's a bit like watching an episode of House of Cards, and it's not what you'd expect of a secretary.
This story begins in Canberra in 2016, when Pezzullo sought to cultivate a relationship with this man, Scott Briggs. He was a Liberal Party insider and confidant to both the then Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull and his Treasurer Scott Morrison. For the ambitious public servant, Briggs was a secret channel to power, and he seized it. Back then, Pezzullo's first task was to use his new friend to convince Turnbull to create a new department called Home Affairs, with Pezzullo at its helm.
Home Affairs will become a proxy for strength on national security. It would be hard for Labor to oppose.
Agree. Was with him last night. Shorten would be mad to oppose it, I think. We addressed the elbow risk.
Pezzullo's ambition was obvious, but he tried to make light of it. He joked about using Briggs to help him take over not only the Home Affairs Department, but much more.
Perhaps give me Defence and Home Affairs at the same time.
If you add it all up, it looks to me very much like the behaviour of a megalomaniac.
Griffith University's Professor A.J. Brown has spent his career looking at the conduct of powerful public servants and speaking up when they go too far. How would you characterise Michael Puzzullo's decision to reach out to a political power broker in Scott Briggs and commence a campaign of backroom influence?
Our whole system of government relies on trust. It relies on the public being able to trust that senior public servants are not entering into political games and political manipulation, getting into the democratic system when they're supposed to be carrying out the needs and the wishes of the people of the community. It relies on trust that senior public servants are not trying to manipulate processes of ministerial appointments or cabinet decisions or other political decisions that are effectively above their pay grade.
But Pezzullo didn't appear to like those rules. What he communicated to Briggs was his overwhelming desire to make the Home Affairs Department all-conquering. But there were politicians standing in his way, including the then Attorney-General, George Brandis.
I suspect that George has been handbraking the Attorney-General's department. The ones who are sniping and conducting an insurgency are a couple of ministers. We must push on and over the top of this resistance.
Why were you such a thorn in his plans to build this new Home Affairs Department?
Well, I was sceptical of the idea.
Brandis believed Pezzullo's proposed Home Affairs Department would be too powerful, and so would Pezzullo. So Pezzullo secretly messaged Liberal power broker Scott Briggs to denigrate and undermine the Attorney-General.
Brandis's behaviour is getting worse.
OK, I fed that into the PM. I think things may be getting closer to a Brandis departure.
I'd like to put to you some of Pezzullo's messages about you. Brandis's behaviour is getting worse. George has got them running in circles. George is involved in a deliberate strategy lawyering public servants into a state of befuddlement. What are your thoughts about those messages?
Well, it reflects, I suppose, Mr. Puzzullo's impatience with the fact that I, as the Attorney-General, was advising Cabinet about the legal risk involved in some of the things that Pezzullo wanted to do. And it is very obvious from the cavalier tone of many of the text messages which you've shown me that he resented the fact that this check and balance existed within the system.
Just touched down in Canberra. I'm seeing Scott and Malcolm at some stage today, maybe having dinner with them. Any messages you want me to convey?
Yep, Home Affairs is going well, except the Attorney-General's department needs to be put to the sword.
I've never seen anything like this. When I read the messages, I was shocked.
Professor George Williams is a constitutional and national security law expert.
This is so far outside of how you would expect a secretary to behave that I did wonder about their authenticity. But having looked at them, it left me very uneasy because it suggested conduct that is well outside what we would expect a secretary to do, and I think is really concerning given how we expect our Westminster system to operate.
We've analysed hundreds of messages sent over a several-year period. The scale of this, what does this all point to?
Well, it shows that it's not one-off, it's not isolated, it's not a one-off mistake perhaps, it's a pattern of conduct.
Both Michael Puzzullo and Scott Briggs declined our interview requests. It's probably understandable though, considering how embarrassing these encrypted messages, obtained by 60 Minutes through a third party who lawfully accessed them, are. Few high-profile government ministers of the day are spared Pezzullo's wrath, especially Defence Minister Maurice Payne and Defence Industry Minister Christopher Pyne.
Payne is completely ineffectual. Maurice is a problem.
It may be too hard for him to dump a woman.
If she stays, then she has to stop thinking and acting like a foreign minister light. She looks weak. And get rid of Pyne from that silly portfolio role. You can say that he has done his job.
At the time, Michael Keenan was the Justice Minister. He too was slammed.
He needs to lift his sights and his horizons rather than getting stuck on questions of status and prestige.
Very true.
Too many passengers in this government.
But it was George Brandis who Puzzullo mostly wanted to knife. Well before the end of 2017, Brandis had decided to quit politics, but Puzzullo didn't know it and was worried Brandis would hang around to oppose his grand plans.
George seems to be trying to negotiate a stay of execution. If that were to occur, he would have to change his mindset and behaviours about Home Affairs. He is in complete denial.
Days later, Pezzullo messaged Briggs a news story announcing Brandis's resignation.
Have I ever let you down?
Having tasted real political power, Puzzullo seems to have wanted more. And with Scott Briggs on the end of his encrypted phone line and Briggs's best mate, Scott Morrison, soon to become Prime Minister, things were heating up.
This was an engagement in the political process that went well beyond anything I've seen.
Canberra might seem slow and staid, but for those in the bubble of power, it's anything but. And at times it can be vicious beyond belief. Like in 2018, when the then Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull was challenged from within his own party. As the government went to war with itself, there was a frantic exchange of messages between Liberal Party insider Scott Briggs and Home Affairs boss Michael Puzzullo, who wanted his intentions known.
If Dutton is out, give me Taylor or Tudge. You need a right-winger in there. People smugglers will be watching.
Agree.
Please feed that in.
Will do.
Now remember, this senior public servant is meant to be above party politics. But as it became likely that Scott Morrison would become Prime Minister, Pezzullo began agitating with Morrison's close friend, Scott Briggs, hoping the Liberal Party power broker would in turn influence Morrison about who he'd appoint to key cabinet roles. These secret messages reveal Pezzullo's brazen attempts to reshape the new government.
I don't wish to interfere, but you won't be surprised to hear that in the event of ScoMo getting up, I would like to see Dutton come back to Home Affairs. No reason for him to stay on backbench that I can see.
I agree.
With Peter Dutton singled out as Pezzullo's preference to return to the Home Affairs Ministry, there was a curveball in the leadership contest when Julie Bishop emerged as an outside contender for the top job. Pezzullo was having none of it. Briggs had to calm the supposedly independent public servant.
Julie B?
A distraction. Not serious. ScoMo is in front, mate. He could be the PM tomorrow.
Almost had a heart attack. Ready to serve. Same goes for Dutton too, of course. JB won't come through as a compromise.
She is at 11. We are at 43.
I shouldn't, of course, express any relief at the state of her numbers.
There isn't one type of trust that hasn't been breached by this kind of conduct.
Professor A.J. Brown is an expert in public sector integrity. You're saying Michael Puzzullo crossed the line?
Well, it's hard to see how the attempt to influence these kinds of decisions using these kinds of channels doesn't breach most of the core principles of accountability and good conduct that a permanent head of a government department would be expected to comply with.
It's now history Scott Morrison took over from Malcolm Turnbull as Prime Minister in 2018. It was a result Michael Puzzullo welcomed, and he was quick to congratulate Morrison's wingman, Scott Briggs.
You played a blinder.
Haha, thanks, mate. He did really well today. He's feeling good. We're talking ministry tomorrow, so I'll chat with you then.
Scattered among the attempts to influence political decisions are some messages which show it's clear Pezzullo knows his role is supposed to be impartial.
Please keep our conversation confidential. Tricky tightrope for me.
A.J. Brown says these admissions only serve to worsen the conduct of the department secretary. I'm sure Mr. Pezzullo would say, well, hang on, in the messages I made quite frequent references to the need to be apolitical. Do those qualify as he injected less in the harm?
I mean, I would read the content of some of those messages as being a self-indictment, in that what's being demonstrated is an awareness of what the conduct should be, what the principles are, and then the conduct continues.
He knew he was up to no good.
Well, I think he knew he was right on the borderline.
Perhaps, but it didn't stop Pezzullo repeatedly trying to resuscitate the career of fallen Prime Minister and ultra-conservative Tony Abbott.
Time to bring Abbott back in? Too hard?
Or shoving the knife into his public service colleagues, including the well-regarded Secretary of the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet, Martin Parkinson.
Sorry to say, Parkinson isn't up to it. Martin P's insecurities don't need to be fed. He is entirely lacking in self-awareness.
The revelation that Michael Puzzullo spent years trying to secretly influence the coalition is now Labor's problem. The current Home Affairs Minister, Claire O'Neill, has already ordered 2 inquiries into departmental failures that happened on Pezzullo's watch. So far, the minister is standing by her secretary, but now she knows the full story about her top public servant that may well change. You've advised both sides of the political aisle on good governance. What should Labor do in response to this scandal?
Well, I think this is an example of where an investigation is warranted. This is not behaviour that any senior public servant, let alone the head of government departments, should regard as being acceptable. It's clearly highly corrosive of the whole way that the system and the public service is meant to work.
Former Attorney-General George Brandis agrees. He says it's vital for the government and the public service to be transparent. Do you think it's in the public interest these messages come out?
Well, I do. What is significant about these messages is that they reveal Mr. Puzzullo's attitude. I mean, these are as revealing of what he thought from his own words as the Watergate tapes were revealing of what Richard Nixon thought in the Oval Office. He, in a sense, has been exposed for what he was doing, thinking he was doing it secretly, and now it's seen the light of day, and I think it is in the public interest that it should.
You've been looking at scandals in public life for a long time. Ever seen something like this?
I think we have to hope that this kind of conduct, that it's pretty rare. What's even rarer is for someone to be caught doing it. And I think any public servant who was actually caught engaging in this kind of conduct, their position almost becomes untenable instantly.
While Michael Puzzullo and Scott Briggs both refused our interview requests, they have provided statements, which you can read on our website. Hello, I'm Nick McKenzie. Thanks for watching 60 Minutes Australia. Subscribe to our channel now for brand new stories and exclusive clips every week. Don't miss out on our extra minute segments and full episodes of 60 Minutes on 9now.com.au and the 9Now app.